Good morning and welcome to the August Executive Forum. I am Dr. Lowe, Dr. Tanya Lowe, and I am your host for today. I am the CEO and the Chief Learning Officer for the Researching Group of Metro Atlanta. We're the leading experts for upskilling and reskilling employees with training, coaching, and consulting services. And we are so excited to bring this topic to you today to talk about multi-generational workforces, how to lead them, how to develop them, and how we can just all get along together. So why are we talking about a multi-generational workforce? Well, I've got some information for you. For the first time in history, we're seeing up to 5 generations in the workforce. And you're like, 5 generations? Absolutely. We've got the traditionalists. Now, those people, you may not see them as much, but they are there. You see them in government. You see them in politics. They're decision makers, right? So you may not see them in the office every day, but they're there. And then we've got our baby boomers. They're not all retired. They are still in the workplace, bringing their wisdom and their guidance. And then you've got the Gen Xers like myself. We are here. We're in the middle of the group. We're showing up. We're still in the workplace. And then we've got our millennials. Now, millennials got a bad rap a few years ago. Everybody was talking about how millennials were up, making the workplace all crazy and everything. But guess what? Millennials are running things now. They are leading departments. They're setting the tone for the future. But then wait a minute. There's yet another disruptor who's entered the workplace, and those are our Gen Zers. Our Gen Zers are, I think, between 17 and 27. They are in the workforce. They are changing things. They have their own thought process. They've always had technology. And so we've got 5 generations working side by side, bringing our challenges and bringing some successes as well as some strengths. The importance of understanding and effectively managing a multi-generational workforce cannot be overstated. That's why we're having this conversation today. Research has shown that age-diverse teams, I'm sorry, I said the D word, because diversity is more than just race and gender. It's also age. Age-diverse teams can lead to increased productivity, creativity, and innovation when managed properly. According to AARP, 83% of global business leaders recognize the value of a multi-generational workforce in driving business growth and success. That's why we're talking about this today. As for Gen Z, they are rapidly entering the workforce and reshaping workplace dynamics. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics, as of 2020, Gen Z, born between 1997 and 2012, made up about 24% of the global workforce. This percentage is expected to grow significantly in the coming years, with some estimates suggesting that Gen Z will make up 30% of the workforce. That's why we're having this conversation today. That's why we need to learn to work better together to create leaders for the future. Understanding unique characteristics, values, and expectations of each generation is paramount, including the rising Gen Z. It's critical for creating harmonious and productive workplaces. So that's why we're talking about this today. So are you ready to meet our amazing panel? We have procured some phenomenal talent today. So I'm going to bring them up one by one. I'm going to introduce them and then I'll bring them to the stage. So our baby boomer Dr. Tony Miles. Dr. Miles is a trailblazer in public health and gerontology with over 200 publications to her name, a Howard University College of Medicine graduate, and a fellow in both the Gerontology Society of America and the American Association for Public Health. Dr. Miles has dedicated her career to improving public health. Since 2020, she has served as the Pope Eminent Scholar at the Rosalind Carter Institute for Caregivers, where her focus is on the 53 million U.S. caregivers, guiding them through the challenges they face before, during, and after the loss of a loved one. Under her leadership, Georgia conducted 2 statewide bereavement surveys, furthering our understanding of this critical area. A passionate mentor, Dr. Miles has shaped the careers of over 80 PhD students and hundreds of medical and MPH students, many of whom now hold prominent positions in higher education, the CDC, and healthcare systems across the country. We welcome Dr. Tony Miles. Our next boomer to the panel is John Brantley. John, for 3 decades, John has been at the forefront of personal and professional development, guiding individuals, leaders, and organizations through transformative journeys. Co-founder of BAM Adventures, John has created life-changing experiences for military families, leading over 150 events globally since 2006. His influence extends far beyond events. He has inspired countless leaders and organizations with his innovative systems for team dynamics, performance, and leader development. Currently, the president and CEO of Oxen 360, John continues to drive forward-thinking leadership. His work is rooted in a profound question: how do we help people transition from one stage of growth to the next? John, welcome. The millennial holding the fort down today is Chantra Lay. Chantra is a seasoned human service leader with over 20 years of experience, specializing in the travel and hospitality industries. Her career highlights include pivotal roles at Delta Airlines, Hilton Hotel Corporation, and Hertz Corporation, where she excelled in diversity strategies, global emerging talent, and award-winning talent development programs. Chantra, I think I mispronounced her name earlier. Chantra is a champion of belonging, excellence, growth, and innovation in the global HR landscape. An Atlanta native and passionate globetrotter, she enjoys exploring the world's culinary delights and collecting passport stamps. Me too. And her family is often asking, where in the world is she today? Welcome to the panel. Our Gen Zers on the panel today are Tisha Pack. Tisha is a 2021 Mary Baldwin University graduate with a BA in economics, now making her mark as a payroll specialist at Ultimate Kronos Group. In her role, Tisha ensures employees are paid accurately and on time. I know they appreciate that. Always adhering to strict legal and organizational standards. Her career journey has included roles such as enrollment coach at Georgia Military College, where she guided students through their academic transitions, as well as positions at the United States Postal Service and Amazon. Tisha's leadership skills are well established, having held significant roles as Interclub Council Chair and Minority Clubs United President during her university years. Welcome to the panel. We also have joining us today my fellow Gen Xer, Bill Campbell. Bill is a seasoned sales leader with a 30-year career marked by a passion for mentoring others and seeing them rise through the ranks. A Texas State University graduate With a degree in communications, Bill has spent most of his career in direct sales and sales leadership, guiding teams to success with his straightforward philosophy: make a plan, work the plan. Proud of the careers he's helped shape, Bill finds joy in watching his former employees achieve leadership roles. Residing in Austin, Texas, with his wife of over 24 years, whom he met on a MARTA train in Atlanta. Bill enjoys cooking, exploring new restaurants, and hiking. Bill Campbell, welcome, welcome, welcome. And I think last but not least is our Gen Zer, Zoe Hobson. Zoe is a dynamic assistant account executive at Outcast PR, where she crafts impactful communication strategies for cutting edge brands like OpenAI, TikTok, and TurboTax. Hailing from Albany, Georgia, and armed with a BA in political science from Yale, Zoe brings a unique blend of academic rigor and passion for advocacy to her work. She is dedicated to amplifying marginalized voices and shaping the narratives that drive the future. Zoe's commitment to social justice and her strategic acumen makes her a rising force in the public relations and communications landscape. Zoe, welcome, welcome, welcome. And so let's get our folks up on this stage. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. I am so excited. I must add that Melvin Robinson, who was supposed to join us today, duty called. He is traveling. He cannot be here, but he sends his well wishes for a fabulous panel. So let's jump on in. So the first question that I'd like to ask everyone is, from where you sit in your organization or any organization, what have some of the challenges been from working with different generations from where you sit in an organization? We're just going to start with the challenges. Get those out of the way. And anyone can jump in.
Yeah, so, Tanya, one of the things that I've observed is that organizations now really don't have a consistent plan on how to build relationships, because relationships are at the core of a high-performing intergeneration.
John, we've got a little turbulence, and I hear a little echo. So I'm going to ask everybody on the panel to mute their lines. And so both of us are echoing. I don't know why.
Now, does that take care of the echo? Yeah. My general sense is that when you look at most organizations today, they have a strategy for how do we improve the performance of our team, but they don't have a strategy for how do we build relationships on the team, which is actually the reason why performance plateaus quite often in organizations, because we've not built relationships that help drive connections, which create problem solving, solutions, and better decision making.
I agree. Anyone else? Go ahead, Dr. Miles. Jump right on
in. I agree partially with John. The other challenge I would say is being, from my perspective, which is 30 some odd years in higher education and teaching across the generations, the strategies that people use to learn are evolving. The way we communicate is evolving. And I am uniquely positioned to see the future because I interact with people who are just coming out of undergrad. I teach graduate courses. Um, just one example, the modern crop, the latest crop of students that I've had the pleasure of interacting with, like to text. I detest communicating that way. Full disclosure, there's no record, right? Your phone is all junked up, it's booping and beeping at you all day, and your thumbs get tired from typing out stuff, so you're misunderstood. So that it's the communication. What do we use to the term that I've become familiar with, level set on anything?
Okay.
That's a challenge.
Okay. Okay. Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Um, let's hear from some of our Gen Zers.
Yeah, I'd love to chime in. Dr. Tony, I totally agree. I think communication is such a huge challenge that we face across generations. I think beyond communication, open-mindedness and just across generations, like Gen Z coming into the workplace, we've got to be open-minded to the status quo that was already there and generations who are already there. But like, I'd love to see more open-mindedness about, us coming in and disrupting and changing some of the things that are happening, because I think there are a lot of changes in our society as far as technology and the way that we work and the way that we view work, and our place in like our general lives and work-life balance, and just being open and patient to what people have to say and different opportunities and opinions that each generation brings to the table, because I think it's just really important just to listen across generations, because I think everyone has something to add.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. I love it.
So, Dr. Lowe, what I would add is, you come into this with all the different stereotypes that you read about, and you got to let that go, and you got to look at individuals. I mean, I think that should go without saying, but I use that as humor. I use sort of self-deprecating humor to diffuse situations and talk about things like, as a funny, generational sensitivity training. Somebody got my generation wrong. I don't care. It's fine. Somebody called me a boomer. I'm okay with that. But I also my former company, we hired early talent. So all Gen Z. And they were all talking, and they were talking about the expression greasy spoon. And I could hear them behind me, and they were like, what is that? And I know what it is. I used to go to one on Piedmont Road called Waffle House. So I just didn't know whether I should let them sort it out or if I should insert myself. So I turned around and I said, greasy spoon is like a Waffle House. It's an old term. And it started a whole conversation about older terms and we use that as bonding. That what seems to be a gap, you can close the gap by using a little bit of humor. So I find that helps, but the labels to me are for fun. It's not, I look at individuals, everybody's different. So it's like, I try to lead individuals versus just groups.
Yeah. As you were talking, I think if we spend more time really not putting people into a box, right? And we really get to know Tisha for Tisha, Zoe for Zoe, John for John, and we can really galvanize what makes what we bring to the table, right? What we bring to the table. We make that assumption that the younger generations only bring technology to the table, but that's not true. That's a myth. They bring so much more to the table. And I think as we have these conversations and not make the assumption, and I'm going to put baby in the corner, what movie is that from? That we actually have the conversation because they're there and they're continuing to come into the workplace. And it's not fair to the newcomer to say, oh, you're young, go sit down, you don't know what you're talking about, but to actually engage them so that they can contribute in the organization. So what are your thoughts on that?
From an HR perspective, I guess I'm your resident HR professional on the phone. I think of the fact that policies and procedures across organizations need to be able to lead to different organizations understanding that the diverse workforce that we currently have. Thinking the fact that promotions, the way we reward people, how equitable are our policies, even thinking at, after 2020, our entire world changed because of remote working being introduced. So thinking of flexible hours, hybrid workplace, and a lot of organizations are coming back to the office, and they're seeing an influx of Gen Zers leaving because they don't want to come back to the workforce and work 5 days a week. So thinking about hybrid working, is it in the office 3 days a week? Is it being in the office 2 days a week? And how different generations are excited to get back in the office. Whereas we have some generations that are like, whoa, if I have to come back to the office after being remote or being hybrid for the past 4 years, then it's now time to look at an organization that's more aligned with having life-work balance.
Yes, yes, I love that. I totally agree. Dr. Miles,
I just want to amplify what she just said. Because the other thing that anyone who's managing a multi-generational workforce has to contend with are the historical trends that are happening in society right now.
Yes.
And really what I want to just call out over and over is the emergence of family caregiving.
Mm-hmm.
Majority of family caregivers are Gen Zs, Gen X's, millennials, and elderly boomers. And that has implications for them, their ability to show up, for employers to accommodate them. That is the big, in my opinion, a big work-life challenge that has to be thought of. The employers who do it well will have a workforce that would go to the wall for them.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're going to hear me bring that up again because I've been looking at the data. In Georgia, we have almost 700,000 working caregivers, family caregivers, and 40% of them are men. Okay?
Wow.
Yes. So, ask the person in front of you, are you taking care of a family member who's ill or disabled or aging? And that will explain a lot of what you see.
Thanks for bringing that perspective, because I don't think that many people think about, that's one more piece to the pie that someone's dealing with. Of course, you've got the people who are taking care of their children and picking them up for after school and daycare, but then we don't really talk about this perspective. So thank you for adding that component, because I think it's really important that we consider that as we talk about leading and guiding multi-generational workforces. So I have a question for the entire panel. How can organizations create a culture that values the strength of each generation while fostering collaboration and mutual understanding? We know that there are a ton of myths out there. And so when we enter the workforce, people will see the myths before they see us, before they get the opportunity to get to know who I am as a 54-year-old Gen Xer, right? So how can organizations create that culture that fosters the strength of each generation? And Tisha, I'll start with you.
Mentoring programs. I know a big challenge for me was being heard. I know being raised in the South is like, respect your elders. So going, and I kind of take the back seat a little more often than most. And then I was like, well, I have a voice too, like, and I'm taking up space, and putting myself in different places. So definitely like a mentor group. I know at my company it was established that when I first came in, I got like a little bit of something from everybody. I got to connect with everybody and they got to show me their ways of doing everything. So that was very important for me. And then still to this day, like I have a mentor, like she walks with me through it all. Like, and when I have questions or when she has questions, like it's that bond and respect that we're building. So yeah, definitely.
I love that cross mentoring. And that's a thing now where I'm mentoring you, but then you can also be mentoring me on, how I need to maybe adjust with how I communicate. Like I want to pick up the phone and call you. I don't want to send a text, but how we can find that balance. So, Zoe.
Yeah, I think what you said about cross mentoring is really important because like I mentioned, I think each generation has something to learn from every generation, even the youngest ones coming into the workforce. So I think even hosting workshops led by each generation, the boomers host workshops, the Gen Xers host workshops, we host workshops, because having a forum of expressing like, hey, I know I'm coming into this workforce, but I have value and experience in different things that you may not have experiences in, and I have something that I can teach you, opens up that ability for us to learn from each other. And I think that's really important. So I think just having cross-generational workshops would be really interesting to see.
Yeah, I love that. And I bet it would be fun too, especially if we bring in food.
Exactly. Different styles, add some food, like it can be a party.
Yeah, I bet that would be a lot of fun. Chandra.
So I have one of those Kamala Harris names, as I call it, Shantra.
And I wrote it. I tried to write it
with a long
N.
N.
Still saying it wrong. Shantra.
It's okay. Shantra. It's the first day of school name too. People always say, "Oh yeah, the first day of school name." So what I wanted to add as a caveat would be during these conversations to have modeling vulnerability and openness during these meetings, making sure that different generations are sharing their own mistakes, maybe lessons learned, because we all have to remember we were once 25, right? We were once 30. I think that I sit on a very interesting perspective because my birthday is January of 1981. So I'm like less than 30 days away from being a Gen Xer. So I do, see myself as having my feet in both generations. And as a leader, I always love to be able to demonstrate that I'm imperfect, that I don't know it all, that I'm willing to learn from different generations that are a part of different projects that I'm a part of, and also give regular feedback, from different generations. What can I do to improve as your leader? How can I really understand who you are, from a generational perspective, and to show that I value and act upon any input generationally during these meetings that we're having that people are hosting across generations.
Oh, I love that. I'm hearing a theme here, and that theme is communication. And there's so many different ways that we can communicate to get to know each other. I don't know when that kind of went out of the window. It's, this is how we do things here. But I can promise you that if you're reading the World of Work reports, if you're reading the World Economic Forum reports, the workplace has changed. It's not is changing, it has changed. And so those leaders and managers who aren't taking heed to what can I do to lead a multi-generational workforce better, you're going to fall behind. Dr. Miles, John, would you like to add something to this discussion on creating a culture?
Yeah, the big word that I would use is process. Yeah, one of the things I've observed actually for the last 25 years, actually, in terms of, and I'm not talking about in academia necessarily here or in some other more structured settings, but if you look at the workplace in general, we've sort of expected people to figure things out on their own. And I think my research goes back to the fact that really it's a leftover from the startup era, because in the startup world, it was move fast, because billions of dollars are on the line, and everybody's expected to think like the startup leader. When in fact the reality is everybody is not a self-starter, but we're all adapters. or at least everybody that's going to survive and grow and develop is an adapter. But if you don't have a process, then you're expecting people to figure it out on their own. And so if you don't have a process, what happens is we tend to go back into our corners as opposed to moving forward. Just a very quick story. When COVID hit, about 2 years before that, my wife and I had downsized, sold most of what we owned and moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in the loveliest part of Athens, Georgia. And in that apartment complex were, Tony, you're going to love this. In that apartment complex.
I just left Athens.
Oh, nice.
Like 2 years ago, I just left Athens.
Well, you know where 5 Points is then.
Absolutely.
So in the apartment complex were a few graduate students, no undergraduates, a few graduate students, mostly young professionals, and just a handful of us who had decided to downsize early and stop having to call the repair person ourselves, get somebody else to fix it. When COVID hit, we'd become friends with our upstairs neighbors, a young couple who had fallen in the Gen Z category, Tisha and Zoe very clearly. And we were outside talking, and one of us said, we ought to start getting together. We don't need to just stay in our apartments. So for 155 days straight, we met. And if it was not raining, that meeting was outside in a big circle. And what was wonderful about it was a group from age 21 to 90.
Wow.
And the joy of that was, even if it was raining, some of us who we could see our porches together, we'd hang out on the porch and say, hey, how you doing? But the interaction of asking questions and listening on all sides, and of course, it's a little bit about how my brain works. How do you build connection that creates the performance you want? And performance in this case means human interaction and building a team. But we don't have process most of the time in organizations to create that, which is why people tend to go, like Pee Wee Herman, and we don't do anything. But most people want to have the connection. But if you don't have the process, you never get the performance that you want out of the human interaction.
Yeah, no, John, you're spot on. I'll give you a concrete example that's been operating in my world. When a change is made in technology, in the computing platform, or how files are stored, there is typically not a process for getting people level set on how to use the new technology. That's been that's been forever. I mean, we put PCs on secretaries' desks when I lived in San Antonio. By the way, Bill, I lived in San Antonio, Texas for a while. And then we yelled at them for not being able to use it effectively. But nobody taught them how to use it. So we do, one of the things I'm finding out is the teacher side of me is more valuable these days than the knowledge base that I bring to things often. So we all need to be teachers.
Yeah. The reality is that we're all teachers if we tap into that, because we all have something to contribute to any discussion, any group. John, I feel like you were doing your own research study during COVID, how rich, I'm sure the discussion was so rich. So I'm going to move us on a little bit. And Bill, I'm going to start with you. So we talked about how to create a culture. We talked about processes and mentoring and workshops and using the lessons learned. How can leaders foster an inclusive environment that values age diversity from team members? So we've talked about how to create this overall culture. We've got our processes in place, but I'm old school, I'm an old school leader, and I believe that this is how things are done. So leaders need to be upskilled and reskilled. So, Bill, I'd love to hear I'd like to start with you. And this is for everyone on the panel. I'd like to start with you on how can leaders foster this inclusive environment?
Yeah, I think, well, one, as my former company, we had employee resource groups that were a focal point and help educate. But I think as a leader and an individual, it's incumbent upon us to get to know individuals. And I'll share an example. This is, again, we hired early talent, all Gen Z. I was in a room and I said, listen, I want this group right here to plan our next outing. And in the course of 10 minutes of conversation, the subject changed 5 times. And one of the young ladies said, I said, wait, do you realize that we're no longer on the topic of the outing? We've all moved on to something else. And she looked up and she said, TikTok. She said, we can't focus. So what? But see, I like that. It's transparent. She wasn't, she was just being honest. And I said, okay. So I adapted the way I would have conversations. I would have sort of bite-sized conversations and not be so verbose when I would talk to them. And I felt like it's me leaning in versus forcing them to lean out. I never wanted to be the leader that said it's my way or the highway. The old school's the better school. I wanted to be the leader, and I've raised a Gen Z. My son's in college, and I wanted to lean into what's the best way you learn. How do you learn things? And I learned that they learn in bite-sized pieces, and that's helped me. And I also had a millennial team years ago, and that stereotype of entitlement, I didn't even find that. It was just a bad stereotype. So one of the hardest working groups I ever led. So use stereotypes as fun, be self-deprecating, but lean into the way they learn the best. And that helped me get closer to them versus, I don't like the fact that you all don't pay attention. When you go with technology, information comes very quickly. The speed of business is much faster. But they're smart, a lot smarter than I was when I was in my 20s.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. ERGs and bite-sized conversations. Shantra, from the HR perspective, from your experiences, how can leaders foster an inclusive environment?
Absolutely. I would like to piggyback off of what Bill said. I love ERGs and really champion organizations that have strong business resource groups. I always use acronyms, so I want to make sure I'm breaking them down in case someone says, "So, what is an ERG?" in the audience. Really, really understanding from a leadership perspective, and I'll give it as personal example is early morning meetings. From a generational perspective, I'm noticing that a lot of generations are early morning, 8 o'clock meetings may not work necessarily for Gen Zs or, like I see my Gen Zs like, no, that's not going to work for me. However, my baby boomers on my team were like, yes, can we have an 8 o'clock meeting? I want to front load my day. Can we, meet before 9? And then I have some people that are like, I don't even start work before 10. It's rude. So really asking the team like what their preferences are when it's time to meet. Even thinking of recognition as a leader, recognizing the team. I had a team example where I spent $200 on these trophies. And once the team were like, oh, thanks for the trophies, across the generation, half of them were like, well, I would rather have had a Visa gift card for $200 versus a trophy in my cubicle. I had another part of my team that were like, well, I would have rather have had a Friday off at 12 o'clock versus a $200 trophy. And then I had another generation. It was like, I love this trophy. I can't wait to put it at the top of my cube so everybody can see it, and come by my office and ask questions about it. So what I decided to do was to ask them how would they like to be recognized and what really worked for them. And I noticed across the board, every generation's recognition was very different. And I wanted to personalize it as their leader to make sure that I was really listening. I was leaning in and are able to lead them according to how what made them tick. And I did notice that from a generational perspective, it was like, who wants a $200 trophy when I can have a Friday afternoon off in August to enjoy the beautiful Atlanta weather?
Wow. Wow. I think that was an excellent example of really leaning in and as a leader making the adjustment. Not everybody gets a trophy, everybody gets a certificate, but I'm going to reward you based on what you'd like to have, because if I'm a caregiver, then that Friday afternoon may be a day for me to do some self-care for myself, or maybe spend some time with my kid, or go to the spa. So and if I've got that $200 gift card, you better know I'm going to be taking the day off because I'm getting on a flight somewhere. So so I love that. John.
Yeah, so it just made me think, Chantra, when I was listening to your comments, that my generation was content to stay at work all day, even if I didn't have anything particularly to do. And whereas I think a lot of the Gen Zers that I work with, they don't really want to, if I'm finished with what I'm supposed to be doing today, and there's not something that I need to be thinking about, in terms of planning for tomorrow, why am I, why am I hanging around? The other thing, and I'd love a comment from Zoe and Tisha on this. In all of my conversations with Gen Zers, which there have been a truckload of, and this is actually part of what has fueled the new leadership work that we're doing now, is that when I talk to them, most of them don't really want to be managed, and they don't particularly want to go to a Tony Robbins motivational workshop every morning to kick off the day or something like that. But they do want to be developed.
Yes.
And if you're willing to invest the time to develop them, they become more emotionally invested in what you're doing. And most organizations, I'm observing, don't have a clear process to develop people, particularly in their role. Which and I find that the folks that I work with that are in the Gen Z world, when you start saying, okay, tell me how you do this, what do you want to know about, how do we tweak it, how do we adjust it, that then they become more emotionally invested, and they begin to take ownership. So I'm seeing some nodding heads. Zoe, I'd love Tisha response or thought from you.
Yeah. I think that is so true across the board, that organizations need to get back to development. It's one thing to attend a training, and so now I've gone to this training, whether it's a bite size or it's an entire day, but then the other part of that is the development part. So Tisha and Zoe, you can answer that, but then I'd love to hear your feedback on what leaders can do, and you can combine that into one if you like.
Yeah, John, I think you actually hit it right on the head. Just the thought of just wanting to be developed. I think maybe in past generations or in the past, people were really invested in how the overall company and how their customers felt. Gen Z is coming in more thinking, I don't want to say selfish, because it's not really selfish, but it's really thinking about more like personal development. Like, what is this company offering me? What is this organization offering me for my personal development, my professional development? Like, where can I go from here? So I think even being open to just having these conversations about what are your professional goals, and being okay if that answer isn't to stay at this company for 10 years and work their way up the corporate ladder, because that in reality is not going to be everyone's answer. It's going to be, hey, I'm here for a learning experience. We are open to having these new experiences. And I think that sometimes means moving jobs and, job hopping or, being disloyal to a company. But I think we've also experienced during 2008, seeing our parents laid off, and during COVID, seeing a lot of our friends laid off, and just knowing that these companies and organizations often aren't that loyal to us. So looking out for ourselves and, thinking more big picture about what this organization that I'm spending 8 hours of my day at is offering me in return. So I think the development is huge.
Yeah. Zoe, to your point, I was talking with a CEO, and they're afraid to ask that question because they know that the answer is going to, many of them are afraid to ask, what is it? What are your goals? What do you want? They're afraid because they know that it's not going to be, well, I want to move up in this organization. It's, I'm here, but I really want to be here. And so as leaders, I think we can't be afraid to ask the question, but we also can't be afraid to hear the answer and not take it personally. Yeah.
And Tanya, can I jump on that for just a second with a huge exclamation point? Most of the time in organizations, we think about development as somebody aspiring to get into a leadership position. And that is so old school that we need to throw that away. It needs to be, and again, Zoe, your head's nodding on this. So I'm assuming you're agreeing that development is about helping people grow in their role. Yes. And most of us have no plan. If somebody came in, the robber came in and in addition to taking their money said, now, before I leave, you have to tell me, how are you developing your people in your role? They'd go,
Absolutely. Tisha, would you?
Also like belonging. Like I want to feel like I belong here and I matter, and what I say is meaning and it means something. And to answer the other question of like what can leaders do, I think Miss Shantara mentioned it earlier.
Chantra.
Leading by example. Like I know it's hard for me to accept some certain mistakes, and like instead of getting hounded, like, okay, I was 25, like it's okay, stuff happens, it's gonna get over, like, stuff like that. So really feeling like I mean and matter, along with that development too, like a sense of belonging.
Yeah. I love that. We've all made mistakes along our journey. We've all been the new person. I can remember entering the work. I was always the youngest. I was always the maybe the only person of color. So like people have to understand as a leader, think back to when you were in that place, not where you are today. And how can you provide some wisdom, some guidance, some mentorship to this new generation, as opposed to focusing on the myths, focusing on, well, this is how I know how you are, and so I'm not going to develop you. And here's the sad truth: they're not going to stay. Gen Zers are like, if I don't feel like I belong, if you're not utilizing my talent that I'm bringing, then I'm out of here. I'll go drive Uber.
Yeah, and Tanya, to echo that, we have to stop thinking as leaders about the length of time that someone stays as a judgment or a echo on them. The reality is the company man or the company woman doesn't exist anymore, except in rare cases. But if somebody stays with you for 5 years instead of 2, or 6 years instead of 3, all you have to do is do the math. And the value to the organization dramatically increases. And the other piece of that, Tisha, related to what you said, not only do I want to feel valued and a part of the organization, but I want to be a better version of myself when I walk out the door.
Absolutely.
Than I was when I came. And you can't do that by just getting people to focus on task every day.
It can't be one-sided. It can't be one-sided. It's got to be a mutual contribution. I can contribute this, but then I also get to take this away. And I think that's the big ask or the big lift when it comes to getting leaders to look at, where do I need to shift in order to develop new leaders, regardless of whether they stay here or they go somewhere else. I promise you, they will always say, when I was at company XYZ, I learned this. My leader taught me that. There are things that I learned a long, long, long time ago when I was a young grasshopper from the YWCA of Greater Atlanta, where Delia Hart Fisher was our CEO. She taught us some amazing things that I still utilize and I think about today. That was years ago. So, as a leader, you never know what you're imparting in the development of other leaders. You never know. So, I've got some generation questions.
And to your
And
point,
yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to end John's statement. Talking about job hoppers, when I think about being in the talent acquisition world and being in HR, looking at resumes, gone are the days of saying, like, you have to stay somewhere for 2 years in order to not seem like a job hopper and to be more attractive to an organization. I champion organizations and leaders that are open and honest about the fact that you may not stay at the same company for longer than a year. You may have walked into an organization and within the first 90 days took a stern look and say, you know what, this is not a culture fit for me. And that is perfectly okay. I would rather, no matter what generation you're in, to walk away, because organizations such as Joy said, are having massive layoffs. It's all over the news. Between now and the fourth quarter, we will see it because it's definitely an election year and a lot of things are happening within the world in which we're living in. So, I had one example is I had someone say, well, why do I have to give a 2-week notice? If you laid me off tomorrow, you wouldn't give me a 2-week notice. If you fired me tomorrow, you wouldn't give me a 2-week notice. So why is it required for me to give a 2-week notice? And it made me think back to say, generationally, I was always taught to give a 2-week notice, right? And I thought to myself, that is true. If we laid you off tomorrow, you wouldn't get a 2-week notice to be able to plan. So as a leader, as a millennial leader, I always think of things like that and put myself in the person's shoes and throw away all the things from the past that we used to do and have an individualized approach when speaking to different generations, because my Gen Zers are not giving 2-week notices. They are definitely looking out for themselves, and gone are the days of saying work-life balance, and now it's life-work balance. And I love that about my Gen Zers.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for adding that. And I think they learned that from their parents. They saw their parents coming home stressed out, worn out, complaining about work. And they're like, no, it's going to be different for me. It's going to be different for me. Another thing I see Tony put in the chat that leaders can do is delegate. And that it's kind of in the same vein that I want to share is cross training. People they're not staying in roles. And so I think as a leader, one of the best things you can do is cross train the people on your team. So if I decide I'm out, I got my $200 gift certificate and I'm out of here, then somebody else on the team, you're not filling that gaping hole. It's succession planning. I think we need to talk about succession planning earlier, as opposed to, well, when this person retires. No, succession planning is when this Gen Zer says, you know what, I have enough, I'm not feeling value. Or when this Gen Xer says, you know what, I'm not getting out of this, I'm putting more in than what I'm getting out. Then you don't have this big hole because you're depending on one person. That's old school. Coming from government, one person would leave and the whole department would have to start all over again. So, we've got to, which goes back to what John said earlier about processes, right? You've got to have processes. And I think a part of that is definitely having succession planning and cross training across the board. So I want to jump into some of my generational questions. And I'm going to start with you, Chantra. How do you approach mentorship, both as a mentee learning from older generations and as a mentor to maybe Gen Zers, or I believe you can mentor. You can also mentor up. So, what's your approach to mentorship?
My approach to mentorship is really understanding that I love a mentor that's not necessarily in my department. When you think about a mentor, you also want to think about the word sponsorship, because those are two different people, right? A sponsor could be someone that is speaking your name in rooms that you're not in when it's time for a promotion, when it's time for a project, and someone says, you know what, let's make sure that Chantra is a part of this project because I want to make sure that her voice is heard and I think that she has something to value. I also want to make sure that I have a mentor that's not necessarily in my department or my division, so that I could learn and lean in to things that they're bringing within their particular department. I can vent to the mentor to say, okay, this is what, my rainy day looks like, and how I can really navigate it without the person having judgment. Also, learning and growing in fostering environments where my mentor can give me a shoulder tap, is what I like to call it, to say, hey, this is how you read the room better. When I think about one of my mentors, his name is Dwight James. He does an amazing job of giving me, I call it raw and uncut advice, business advice, and I love it. But also fostering an environment to where he's saying, one of some advice was recently was create a rainy day folder in your Outlook. And what you do is, so say oftentimes you receive all these emails where people are praising you and saying how great you were, projects that you've worked on. But guess what? That's not like that every day. Every day is not rainbows and unicorns at all. But what you want to do is put those emails into that Outlook folder that's called your rainy day folder. So anytime you're having a day and you're like, okay, is it Friday yet? Is it 5 o'clock yet? And you're working on a project, you can go to that rainy day folder and you can read those emails and those accolades that give you an opportunity to remember who you are, what you bring to the table within the organization, and how you are valued. So I would say, have someone that is a mentor to you that's not in your department, and someone that can give you those pick-me-ups, and someone that can give you an opportunity and speak your name in rooms before you get there. And on the second side of your question, it had to do with mentoring others. I love mentoring and sponsoring others in other generations, especially my Gen Zers, because it allows them to know that I'm aligned to their values. I'm aligned to really being a great listener for them. And I feel like I can even learn from my mentees. I have some mentees that I come home with my aha moments. I go on my iPhone all the time and I write down my iPhone notes of things that they're passionate about and how I can implement them in my everyday life. So I choose mentees that I can also grow and learn from, because I feel like it's a two-way street for me, despite which generation they're in.
Oh, I love that. And it is a two-way street, it is a two-way street. And I think we can't stop saying that enough. Communicate, get to know the individual, and understand that value is something that can be shared both ways. And so if you take one thing away, start that conversation now with the people on your team. We're going to pop over to Bill. Bill, I got a Gen X question for you. What challenges? Gen X is considered the middle child of the generation.
Right.
So, as the middle child of the generations, what challenges have you faced in advancing your career while working alongside both older and younger colleagues? Or what have you experienced, or what have you seen in the workplace?
Well, one of the characteristics that defines Gen X is we're pretty self-sufficient. I mean, we're the last of the feral children. Like, we were the, be home by dark. If you get thirsty, grab somebody's water hose and drink from it. so we've always been, we were latchkey kids, our first generation with 2 working parents. And so you coming into the workforce, it was, you got to make your way. Like you have to work hard and prove yourself.
Yeah.
So navigating leadership really, and this isn't a knock at all. I mean, boomers are taking their time to retire, and I get that because they have that self-satisfaction in their work. And so moving up has been a slower process because they haven't been as willing, or in some cases are not prepared to retire. And so one of my mentors is a boomer, and we worked through being out of work and the pep talks that go with being out of work, and sort of how to present yourself. And so I think because my generation is extremely resilient and has seen a lot of ups and downs, economic shifts and headwinds and pivot points, I'm okay with that. I've learned to be more patient in my career because of that, and not have this sort of, we are defined by apathy, but I let that go. Apathy and sarcasm are also characteristics of Generation X. But I'm not apathetic. You get to a certain age, you can see both sides of the coin. And I also am my mother's a boomer, and so I'm like, you work as long as you want. I'm patient with my career. I'm satisfied with what I'm doing. So I think it's the longer I've gotten in my career, I've been more patient with it and learned to take joy in giving trophies versus receiving them. And that can also elongate your career. I'm not in it for me. I'm in it for them. I look at an org chart as upside down, where I'm on the bottom and I've got to remove the obstacles for the people above me. So that's one of the things that I've learned is just be patient, not be so like, I'm okay with they want to work as long as they want to work. It's totally fine with me.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. I just looked over at the comments, and people are loving this conversation on LinkedIn. A lot of comments. Someone says, I'm loving the VIP section. Wear my M&Ms, go Gen X, jump on that bike and ride out. This is an amazing conversation. So many great techniques and recommendations here. We use a lot of collaborative tools like Jira, Confluence, Slack, Mural, Google Suite tools to help accelerate remote communication across states and teams. So people are leaning in to this conversation. So when you get a chance, go back and check out the comment section on LinkedIn. So boomers, to that same and within that same vein, we've not talked a lot about technology today, but I'm gonna shift the conversation. What strategies have you found effective in adapting to new technologies and work processes that are introduced by your younger colleagues? Do you struggle with them? Do you welcome them? Are you, what strategies have you found?
So I'm going to weigh in on that one because the organization that I'm part of right now is moving its computer platform. And that's like sticking a firecracker in your ear and lighting it. Boom, done. And the language of that process is foreign. But because I don't care about people thinking that I'm an ignoramus, I ask questions. And so that's kind of, I've learned all that I know about Google Docs and scheduling meetings. I can do all kinds of platforms for Zoom and all of that because I allow my younger colleagues to teach me things.
Yeah.
So I want to get back to something that Bill said, because I am not patient with my peers for working too long. Okay, so he's learned to be sanguine because his head would blow up if he didn't. But I do believe that many of us have sell-by dates that we have blown right past.
Wow.
You have to change up or you get stale. This is an argument I'm having within my generation. Okay, wow. You cannot do the same thing for 40 years and do it well. You got to do something different. So, you know, I'm going to get drummed out of the core for this one. I've been in I have been in gerontology for 40 years now, but different ways.
Mm.
And so I've seen it. The boomers are deforming the lifespan achievements by staying too long in some positions.
Yeah.
You know, at a certain age, you expect to get married and have children and buy a house and make those, you know, if you have loans, you hopefully someday will pay them off. I'm just saying. But because the boomers won't vacate the position that you might have been taking on, I'm talking to you folks in your 50s. Okay? I am so proud. I know we're not talking politics, but here's our intergenerational lesson of the month. When Joe Biden gave that up to Kamala, that was amazing. I mean, I want to say effing amazing, but you know what I'm talking about. Because nobody wants to relinquish power.
Mm.
Okay? That's
Yeah.
why I put in the chat or in the question, what about leaders delegating roles?
Yeah.
That's how you mentor people. You give them a project that's kind of within their skill set, but which stretches them a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then how you do it?
Mm-hmm.
What do you need from me? I mean, mentoring is bi-directional.
Yeah.
If I'm going to mentor you, then what do I get out of it? You got to teach me something new too, or my brain will turn to goo and pour out of my ears. I'm sorry I could go on like this, but the technology is where it's most manifest.
Yeah.
I mean, I have 3 email accounts that I'm juggling.
Imagine that. Imagine that, Dr. Miles. Imagine that.
But
Yeah.
you know, somebody with 2 advanced degrees, I got this.
Yeah.
Only because people teach me how to do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. John.
Yeah, if you're a mechanic and somebody comes up with a better wrench, do you want to just throw that away and say, no, I think I'm going to use the one that my great grandfather gave me, you know, when I was 2 years old? No. The real truth is, I believe, you either adapt or you become irrelevant. Now, that's just a fact.
Yeah.
And the thing, I happen to be 71, and I do not plan to ever retire. Now, I run my own business, but I don't plan to retire for one reason. When I look at men, this is a male conversation here. When men retire, they become curmudgeons. They tend to just kind of fall into themselves. Women have been building relationships their entire lives. They have community. They've nurtured it. And men tend to stop thinking and they start complaining. And that's not a very good gift to give to the next generation. Yeah. And so, you know, so the whole notion of do people need to retire? Yes, I absolutely think that people need to retire along the way. But if you're not continuing to develop your mind, if you're not continually willing to say, what do I need to let go of now that used to fit me really well, but I can't wear it very well anymore, then you will quickly become irrelevant. And now I have a bias. I want to be relevant for my grandchildren. Because I want them to believe that somebody cared about them at a young age enough to ask them questions about how their world is, not just wait on them to come up to me. You know, so you know, Tony, I think I'm probably hitting the same check mark you did, but you either adapt or you become irrelevant. That's a statement of evolution.
Amen.
You know, when I would go and you know, growing up in the government world, and I'd go to different programs and people would say, you know, I've been doing this for 20 years. And I'm like, I'm so not impressed because you've been doing the same thing, the same way for 20 years. And so that's why you're bumping your head. You can't get things done. You know, if it's not broken, don't fix it. It doesn't have to be broken to fix it. You can do it better. You know, if there's a better way to do it. So
Yeah.
I appreciate your perspectives. Yes, Dr. Moss.
Yeah, I was just gonna say one piece of technology. I wrote my PhD dissertation on an IBM Selectric. Most of you know what that is. They had the little balls that go around. We didn't have, you know, the computer was a great innovation.
Yeah.
You just have to learn how to use it. And so, yeah, John, you know, you've got to evolve or do something else. You know, growing vegetables is a very worthwhile pastime. You eat well, you get flexibility. I mean, life brings changes. So, yeah.
And you can do TikTok videos, right?
I personally am not into that. I'm more of a Lincoln.
Yes.
I'm, you know, I think, and this is old school me. I would rather read a book than, you know, make videos.
So I've got questions for my Gen Zers. Got two questions for you. So, you know, we've been having this, I believe, an amazing conversation. The first question I want to ask you is, what unique perspectives or skills do you believe your generation brings to the table that can benefit multi-generational teams? And Tisha, I'll start with you.
I want to say like funness, like this airiness of lightness. Like it doesn't have to be so strict all the time. Like let's vibe. You know? Like just vibe, guys. It's not so serious all the time.
Yeah. And you can have fun and still get the work done, right?
Right. And that's what makes the work even more fun. Like, okay, I'm ready to come back tomorrow because we're going to do this. We're going to do this. So, yeah, definitely funness, airiness, lightness is a big thing that my generation brings to the table.
Okay. All right. Zoe.
No, I love that. We definitely do bring the fun to the office workplace because, you know, you're right. It doesn't have to be like so serious all the time. And the work and the quality, like me coming to the office place with like colorful clothing or just like, you know, with like saying period, things like that does not change the quality of my work at all. You know, like I think Gen Z has the ability to bring their authentic selves to work. And like, so like there's less code switching. There's less like, you know, adapting to the workplace environment and workplace politics. It's more just, I'm going to be here for this huge chunk of my day. I'm bringing my whole and full self to work. And kind of like Gen Z is kind of a forcing function. Like, hey, you either accept me or accept that, or I'm heading out the door. So I think that Gen Z, like one skill or value that we bring to the workplace that benefits all generations is just like radical imagination about what the workplace could be. Like, it doesn't have to be the way that it always has been. I think things like we're experiencing have made us question like where we're working, how we're working, and more importantly, like why we're working. And that has fundamentally changed. Like, why are we here? Why are we working? Our like life has to be more than your 9 to 5, you know? And I think that Gen Z is really reckoning with that fact. Like, there's got to be more to life than just coming to work, doing the same thing every day and leaving and like making dinner and going to sleep. So we are prioritizing, you know, things outside of that, outside of our 9 to 5. And that's like this work-life balance or life-work balance, which I love, is becoming more a thing.
Absolutely. You know, I'm not going to even ask the life-work balance question because I see it. I see it when I go into companies. I see it when I talk to CEOs. And I believe that you Gen Zers are the mirror for other generations. You do bring your true authentic self. You know, we talk about showing up authentically in being who you are. You're true examples of that. And that can be a challenge sometimes for people who feel like the workplace needs to be in a box. We don't talk about this here. We don't do that here. and we show up. We bring our whole selves to work. Now, of course, there's a balance in that, but we show up and we bring our whole selves to work.
And I think, I mean, what I try to say to the people that work for me, because it becomes cliche to say work-life balance. Work is a means to an end. It's not the end.
It's not the end.
Because then if that's all you do, eventually you just burn out. If you don't find, my last company started saying work-life blend. And I think it was a little off-putting to people. And it really came about because of COVID, because they were working from home. And so they used the word blend and it seemed convenient. But I always tried to caveat that with make sure it's a means and it's not the end. You've got to have a rewarding and rich life outside of work, or why are you working?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Dr. Miles said Gen Z has made the concept of retirement obsolete. Obsolete. So my second question for Gen Z is, as digital natives, how do you see technology reshaping the future of work? And what insights do you offer to your older colleagues? And Zoe, I'll start with you.
This is such a good question because I do a lot of work on like OpenAI and just AI in general. So I'm just really into just how it's completely revolutionized the way that we work, the way that we think. And I think that looking at just technology in general and technological innovations, this is doing work and taking a lot of like the busy work, like the small things that I like not meaningless tasks because they do help the business they run, but like smaller tasks where I can use my brain power and my time for like bigger ideas, for more creativity, for like those high functioning, those like really big, just like plans and things that take place during the workplace. Like I have more space in my brain, not just like logging things in an Excel sheet. I can now think, I can create strategies. I can create communication strategies. I can think more like fully and have more brain space to just be a better teammate and be like a more productive. I struggle to use the word productive because I just feel like that's not like something I'm kind of aiming for. I'm aiming to actually bring AI is artificial intelligence, by the way. So it's a lot of just the automated task and just a lot of these.
I know what artificial intelligence is, but everybody I hear talk about it thinks about it in a different way. So what you communicating, this is where I stop. If I don't understand what's going on, explain it to me, because I know people who are frightened that AI is going to eliminate their jobs. And I can tell you from some work we've done in the classes that I teach, AI is making us fat.
I think technology in general is honestly making us fat. We live a much more sedentary lifestyle these days.
Exactly. So tell me, when you say AI gives you more space to think, what do you mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that a lot of people may think that AI is going to replace their jobs. Like I think that's a general fear of just technology in general. People thought laptops were going to replace their jobs and things like that. So I think that like that's something that, as something that's so new and so change making as it's being introduced to society, there are going to be just like trepidations and fear around it. But I think thinking artificial intelligence, like I said, automating tasks. So like chatbots where you have the kind of touch of the internet, the touch of the world at your fingertips with your smartphone and Googling. Chatbots can pull all that information, consolidate it into an organized research paper or just a research brief so that you aren't spending 30 minutes to an hour looking through Google and Google Scholars and scholarly journals. You have this concise, really well-researched kind of body of work where you can just read that one kind of source and you are a more well-informed person going into the next meeting, going into your next, project, because you have this information and it was pulled together for you through artificial intelligence. So I think that like when I'm thinking about, if I'm personally like tasked to do a job that I know that technology can already do for me, that AI can do for me, then I'm questioning like, what am I doing here? What's my value here? where other generations will be like, oh, it's going to replace my jobs. It's like, no, I'm like, technology can do this for me. Like, what am I doing this for when my brain power, like, I think I value my skills enough to know, like, this is not a good use of my time and use of my brain power. I can shift and think about bigger things and more strategical things than, sitting on Google and searching something up. So I feel like it makes me smarter.
Zoe, to your point, I was on a conference with some colleges, and they were, all of the colleges are afraid about, oh, AI is cheating. And one of the professors said, it won't be long before we start to see AI prompt engineers. And I promise you, maybe 3 weeks ago, I see certifications for prompt engineering. So it's not just, oh, I'm going to go and find the answer. It's coming up with the best question. So you're still using your brain. You're still, you may say, oh, I'm going to draft this out and then let AI assist me. But it's here to stay. And we're using the bargain basement version of it right now, because 3 years from now, 5 years from now, it's going to be doing so much. And as a Gen Xer, I want to know everything.
Exactly. It's so important to know as much as you can.
Yeah. John, let me get to Tisha real quick to have her add to this question, then I'll come back to you. So Tisha, same question. As a digital native, how do you see technology reshaping the future of work?
Definitely piggybacking off of Zoe, like, it creates more flexibility, less structure. Like, it can, we can start doing those development stuff, like diving into that. And also, again, with the fun is like TikToks, exposure, like getting the works out there, like getting, being able to interface with different people. And I just want to say, Dr. Miles, like, I was definitely one of those people, like AI, growing up watching, the movies and stuff. It's like all these robots, they might take over, you know what I'm saying? So I was definitely a part of that. But yeah, definitely the technology is increasing flexibility, allowing us to be able to do more with our time.
Yeah. John.
So all I was going to do to piggyback on both what Tisha and Zoe have said is, for years and years and years now, even though we've tried to teach leaders the human side of development, the practical thing that has happened is we're still creating doers in the workplace by our leadership models. And Zoe, what you are saying, what I hear that very clearly, and Tisha, you too, is I don't want to be a doer. I want to be a developer and a grower and a prosperer. And if we don't change our leadership models, then we're going to have greater turnover, lower morale, all of those things that organizations are trying to figure out how to do something different with. And it is simply as much as opening your ears and listening to what the two of you just said. Say, oh, I probably, yeah. It's not just about, did you do your task?
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, this has been so great. So last question, and this is for everyone. We've talked about a lot today. What is the one thing you would, a leader, if you had an opportunity to talk to a leader listening in on this conversation, what's the one thing you would say is the takeaway that they need to take from this conversation today? What do they need to take away and start implementing right now, today? Who wants to go first? Go ahead, Bill.
Lean in and learn.
I'll go first.
I would say that.
Bill, okay, lean in and learn. Okay. You're muted.
Okay. Mine would be change policies and procedures across generational lines in order to make things more inclusive and equitable across all generations. I think that there are lots of antiquated things that may be happening within organizations that are not inclusive of boomers, Gen Zers, Gen Ys, and millennials. So that would be mine. Would be, definitely review those policies and procedures and see how we can make work more fun, make work a vibe, as well as making sure that we have an inclusive working environment.
Great, thank you. Zoe?
I think I would say to leaders that like hustle culture is out. I think now like more fulfillment is in. So making sure that the culture of your workplace is fulfilling to all of your employees.
I love that. Thank you. John?
Create processes to get what you want, and then enjoy the community that you're building.
Oh, I love it. Tisha?
Get personal. Like, work is a family too. Like, make it grow. Like, feed it. Like, these people you work with every day, like, they're your family now. You work with them 9 to 5. Like, come on.
Yeah, some people spend more time at work than they spend with their real families. So, yeah. Dr. Miles?
I'm going to build on something Bill said earlier. Stay curious. Reward curiosity. I evolved over the years because I said, well, what if? How about? I mean, some people are really threatened by that question, but I love me some good what if. That's why Zoe's conversation about AI I enjoyed that. We want more of it. So yeah, stay curious and reward it when you see it.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for being here with us today. Will you tell everyone where they can find you if they would like to connect with you? And Tisha, I'll start with you.
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, Tisha Pack. Everywhere, Tisha Pack. You can find me here.
All right, Dr. Miles.
Yeah, LinkedIn. I like to have conversations. I've had fights with people on LinkedIn. Let's go. I usually take them off to the side because I hate these long. But yeah, LinkedIn is a good place to find me. Also, the Rosalind Carter Institute for Caregiving.
Great, thank you. Phil Campbell.
Yes.
I am on LinkedIn. It's my only social media outlet. But I'd love to connect with you, ask me questions. I'd love to learn from you as well. That's how you find me. I'm on LinkedIn.
Okay, Zoe.
Yeah, also on LinkedIn, find me Zoe Hobson. I'm there, and if you want more of my personal, the fullness of me, then I'm also on Instagram at Zoe G Hobson. So welcome to follow me on both.
Chandra.
LinkedIn as well to echo. Also, my hashtag on LinkedIn is hashtag where in the world is Chantra Lay today. So if you use that hashtag for any of your searches on LinkedIn, you can see into the world of Chantra, who I am and where I'm going, and would love to connect with you all and learn more about an audience. So if our audience can, look at the bottom right here to get that correct spelling. See you on LinkedIn.
Awesome. And John.
LinkedIn also you can find us at theauxinleader.com. That's TheAuxin leader.com.
Awesome. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you are, whether we're with us live today or you are watching the replay, thank you for joining us. Thank you for contributing to the discussion. We will go through and look at your comments and answer your questions if you left them for us. To the panel, thank you for your time, for your wisdom, for sharing your genius with us today. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. End stream.